So in the first part, that was simplest branch. This branch is matching your first part of assignment 2. Now I want to switch to second branch, and this branch is called basic architecture. In this branch, I'm rearranging the code such way I have a clear separation between data access layer and GUI. A GUI is slightly edited, but not in drastic way. You'll see. Yeah. So basic architecture, I'm switching checkout. Here it is. Again, I switched branches, and this branch is using different libraries, so I need to synchronize. Otherwise, Android Studio is getting confused. As a rule, after switching branches, just click synchronize. It's easiest. Okay. So let's see what kind of libraries I use it. So I click project, and it'll build Gradle top level file, this project level. You see that I'm using needed for dependency injection, Dagger Hilt. So the same in your path to create new branch and include this library here. It is top level. Right. It is not hard to find, but it does require searching developerandroid.com website. Easiest is to copy paste from this project. Right. Next, build Gradle KTS. At the top also have capped and Dagger Hilt Android as a plugin needed for dependency injection. Previously, it was switched to 34, so it is still there. 17, 17, 17. This was changed. And previously, I had and still have view model, coil, and I inserted needed for dependency injection these two libraries. Okay. And scroll it down, I also inserted this. Again, how do I know? I searched developerandroid.com for Hilt libraries. So I went to developerandroid.com, search box, Hilt, and it brought me to the web page discussing what libraries to include. After including these libraries, I clicked elephant button and run project. Make sure that it compiles. If project doesn't compile after including libraries, it will never compile. No, it will come. You will have to resolve compilation issue. Okay? So first thing is after include libraries, after including libraries, try to compile. Next, so after including these libraries, I need to make my project work with Hilt dependency injection. So I do need to have extra steps in addition to including libraries, obviously. So what is the next step? I created class, call it PetData application. So having this class is requirement due to using Hilt. So I right-click it and I click New, Kotlin class file, selected class, and I got PetData application. I inherit from application class, and this is library class. See? On your slides, you saw discussion of application class, and it is used to store globals. Right? In this class will be used internally by Hilt framework to store necessary stuff, but they will not use this class. It will automatically inherit from it and use own class to store stuff. Okay. Later, we will use this class to store additional things for Work Manager. So it won't be always empty. Okay. So having this is a requirement of Hilt. It will inherit from it and build some extra code to store stuff. We need to write Hilt Android, add Hilt Android app on the top. Okay. Next, After having the class, we must go to Android manifest XML and add this line, name, and this is reference to the class. If it is missing, your program will crash when it is starting, and it will say something like missing application blah 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 class. Okay. All right. So this is necessary step. After this, we open main activity and write Android entry point on top of it. Okay. If we have more than one activity, we'll have to mark them as well. What is the rule? Everything that is using dependency injection or enclosing stuff with a dependency injection should have Android entry point on top of it. We use view model, and view model is associated with the given activity, and this view model is using dependency injection. So this is the reason why we have to put Android entry point on top of it. Okay, so far? So this is always, if it is missing, it will be crashing when it starts. Next. Now, I'm creating repositories, so it is data access layer. So I want to go to developer-android.com, developer-android.com, search architecture guide. Architecture, guide to IPP architecture, here it is. In the guide to IPP architecture, we will see UI layer, and this is what we did in UI layer. We have UI elements and stakeholders, which is our view model, right? A domain layer is optional, but in my domain layer, I just have pet class. In this example, I decided not to implement use case classes for simplicity. So this example doesn't have use case classes. And since it is optional, yeah, okay, optional. We've already learned how to use case classes, and this was learning experience. We don't always have to stick to it. Now, I'm creating data access layer, at least imitation of it at this moment. And let's click data access layer, data layer, about data layer. We will learn that data layer also have layers. So at the top we have repositories, at the bottom data sources. Data sources could be database or some library that talks to internet or something else like accessing file, whatever. And repositories provide common interface. Repositories can use other repositories as acquire data and change it. We have one repository getting data from other repositories. So repository essentially do data transformation or some logic before a data leaves data access layer. In my case, I'm creating imitation of it, like I do have a data coming from repository. In reality, it will still come from the file, still come from the hard-coded array, list of the objects. But in the third part, it will come from web. Okay. So I'm creating imitation of it, and data source, in this case, will be just a list of objects, and repository will provide this list to the rest of the program. So what do I have? In data layer, in local, I still have this part, and kind of data source, right? It's not really data source, but it's playing the role of data source. And I also created a repository layer, and this contains repositories. I have a definition of a repository interface, and it has one function, get all pets. It is returning list of pet objects. Please notice keyword suspend in front of a function. Suspend functions are executed in separate tasks separate from GUI, so they don't freeze GUI. And this is the flag attached to function that tells the system executed separate task, and we cannot execute it in the GUI thread even if we want, because code will not compile. It will be underlined in red, and it won't compile. Okay. So it has deep suspend function. Suspend keyword has deep meaning for compiler, but for our outside point of view, it's a flag for a function that probably run longer than usual. Right? Longer than usual. That may say get frozen because it's waiting for data, essentially. So it is the reason why we execute suspend function in separate tasks, so it doesn't freeze GUI. In this case, it is just picking data from a list of objects, so it will never freeze. Right? It will never freeze, but I'm doing the imitation because next step is this function will pick data from server. Okay. Next. This is just declaration, so I need to make an imitation of it. Not imitation, make implementation of it. So I create additional class, not additional, just class, a fake data repository, which is using constructor with keyword inject. What is the meaning of keyword inject in front of constructor? It makes this object injectable. It means we don't call constructor ourselves, but we tell the system if you need this object, call constructor and use it when necessary. If constructor has parameters, those parameters needs to be known to the system. So system, like injection system, so system will needs to know how to create those objects. Okay. So injections, the dependency injection system creates objects and connects them together. So in this case, there's no parameters. But if there are parameters, Hilt needs to know how to create those objects to give it to constructor. Okay. So inject in front of constructor, it's a kind of double meaning to make entire object fake repository injectable, and also tells that parameters are injected from elsewhere. All right. So what is inside of it? I'm implementing suspend function, get all pets. If function contains only one statement, we can assign it directly to the function. Technically, I could use curly braces with return statement from inside, but in this case, it is one statement. What does this mean? With context dispatchers IO. Suspend functions are executed in a separate task, and dispatchers takes care of executing them and how to execute them. In this case, we deal with the functions that does potentially input-output. So there is a optimizer dispatchers for doing inputs-output, and it is dispatchers IO. So dispatchers execute this function. In this case, it is specifically for IO, dispatchers for inputs-output. So whatever is called here will be executed with dispatchers IO. In this case, nothing special. It is just data from a list. Right? But in the next version of the code, it will be another function call that is getting data from web, okay, or from a server. So this wrapper around is not necessary in this case, but I'm looking ahead that this function that will be here instead of an array will be executed by dispatcher's input-output as a separate task. So it will not freeze GUI. All right? So I'm building framework to use in the third step. Okay. So this is my implementation of fake data repository. Okay. Next, this part, it's navigation link that take you where this piece is used, and this will this is not navigation. It is just going to interface. Okay. So if we click on this one, and it says, oh, it's taking you to module. So this part, fake data repository, is using as a parameter in this abstract function. Okay. So what is module? Module, it is description how to create objects for dependency injection. In this particular module, it is abstract class. It is description how to create objects of this kind. Okay. A return type of functions inside of module, it tells use this function to create object of this kind. In this case, we have abstract function, and we don't need to implement it because system knows how to create interface object from this. It is just returning it, right? Because fake data repository, it is PetData repository. So essentially, these binds tells dependency injection system use fake data repository instead of PetData repository. Okay. In other dependency injection systems, this is not necessary step, but for HILT it is necessary. Okay. So what does it tell? This is interface, so if you need object of this interface, use this. Okay. So where it is used, clicking this again. Now it is where PetData repository is used. I click this, and it takes me to view model. Right. So it is injected into constructor of view model. So this is how data is linked to my view model. Injected into constructor. So inject in front of constructor of view model plays the same role, makes this object injectable, and this is already known how to make it, right? Because we provided instructions for building PetData repository. Right? PetData repository interface, but it is linked to implementation, fake data repository. Just because it is in view model, in special case, so special case of classes, we need to write HILT view model on top of it. If this is missing, it will crash when program runs. Okay. So this is how data is getting inside of view model. It is injected into constructor of view model. Okay. So now, if you compare to previous code, you will see that first state is loading, right? It is not loaded because I have other code below. So I have more states now. Opening and going to UI, pet list, states, pet list UI state. Now I have loaded, loading, and error. Okay. So my starting state is loading. I also created screen that shows that some loading is going on. It is loading body. Okay. It will appear like this. Okay, I'm running preview. Okay, so it will show loading data. And I have fake delay inside. You will see where it is. Because data is so fast, you will never see the screen unless you delay it just by fake delay. If you delete line, that is essentially say delayed 2 seconds, it won't show. Okay. So this is a loading screen. And as you see, it is nothing fancy. It is just column with 2 text. This is just in bigger fonts, and this is smaller fonts. Okay, and I created additional screen arrow body that looks like this. Let's run preview. Loading arrow. But I also have a button retry. When arrow happens, data didn't come for some reason, bad connection, whatever. I have an option to click retry, and it will try to execute data, loading again. Okay? So let's link this to my view model. This is my view model. No, not this one. This one, list view model. So original state is loading. Right? And init will be, it's a part of constructor. It is next thing that will be executed. So it will call load pet list function. So what happens in load pet list? View model scope launch. This part is launching in the separate task, independent task from GUI, so it's not freezing the GUI. And this launching has a scope of new model. All tasks do have scope. In this case, this is scope of view model. It means this task will live not longer than view model object. It is important if we do navigation between screens and user goes from one screen to another screen to another screen. If one view model is launch a task to display something on the screen and user goes to another screen, it is too late. There is no need to run this task because user is already left. Okay? So for this reason, scopes are in tasks in view model are limited to the scope of view model. If one view model is launching task to display something on the screen, but it didn't finish before user left the screen, this task will be killed because it's too late. There's no point of updating something that is no longer there. User is not interested. So in order to avoid accumulating tasks that no longer necessary, tasks launched from view model have scope of view model. So if user goes to another screen, the task will be killed. All right? So what happens here? I have fake delay. It is in milliseconds. So if you delete this one, you won't see the loading screen, obviously. And this is just for sake of seeing the screen for 2 seconds. Now, I have try and catch. When we connect to internet, it could be network error, like server is down, for example, or the timeout, server is busy, doesn't respond. And it will throw exception, IO exception or some other exception. In this case, I'm catching IO exception. Okay. It could be also HTTP exception. So I could use either 2 exceptions or just general exception. So this is not precise. Okay. So what do I have here? Try a repository get all pets, and this is my list of pets. Coming from repository, in this case fake repository, but who cares? This code will stay the same for next part. You see it's already prepared to receive data from network, right? Then when data is received, I'm changing state, you see UI state value, to load it. And pets are given as a parameter to load it as before, right? So loaded screen knows where to get it, right? So it is parameter of the states. If exception happens, it is called here. I will change state of it to arrow. And arrow, this one, will contain some messages. And in this case, I will print it as a log. So when it is crashing, you will see it here. Not crashing, but arrow happens, you will see it is at the bottom. By the way, if program is crashing, it doesn't die silently. If program is crashing, remember that log cat contains information about what happened. It's not always obvious, but it is at least some information. Okay? If something goes wrong, it will be in red, like something bad. Okay? It is in log cat. All right? What is this function? Reload pet list. This reload pet list function is used from retry. So it is for retry screen. From not retry, loading screen, retry button. So what will it do? It will flip state to loading and call load pet list again. So this is for retry button. All right? Now I have more states, so I need to edit my screen, right? Function, pet list screen. Remember, previously I have UI state loaded because I had only one state. Right? Now I have loading and arrow options. If I have loading, I'm displaying loading body. You saw what it is. It is just column with two messages. If it is arrow, I'm calling arrow body, but I pass lambda function because there is retry button. And this lambda function will be executed when we click on retry. Right? This. So it is view model reload pet list. And you saw what it does. It flips screen back to loading and tries to load data again. All right? So at this level, program is reorganized, but data still is not coming from network. It's still coming from fake repository. But I have almost all structure except data source. Data source is missing. Data source is just array, but it should be rewritten, right? So let's stop everything and run, not preview, obviously. We need to switch to app. We have to be careful what we run, right? Because sometimes we may get confused and run preview and see why nothing is happening. Because it is just preview of one screen. So what happens, you see it's loading for 2 seconds and hop, it's come. Okay. So now I have two states and data is coming from fake repository. Okay? Questions? If no questions, I consider this done for part 2. And next it was part 3.